Happy holidays has a new meaning when you're actually happy, and I hope you all had a very Merry Christmas individually, as collectively the Cowboys seemingly, even yesterday, got a ho lot better.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at AllDayOState. Today, we're partially brought to you by Gametime Tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Gametime app today to get started with your ticket buying presentation. The presentation right now in Stillwater, America is a lot better after the most disastrous season of my adult lifetime. And realistically, you can include growing up in that as well. We have seemingly kind of found our feeding once again, our footing. Feeding is not a word, but Todd Grantham continues to bring some guys home. And whenever you're looking at the dead period and going into the holiday season, that's typically when everything kind of gets shut down to some degree. But Oklahoma State has had the ability to continuously bring guys in. And when you're looking at what Todd Grantham is bringing, we're going to talk about some of the offensive guys as well. But before we kind of talk about the coaches and the collective feeling that you're seeing right now in Stillwater, America, let's talk about some of the guys that we were able to get surprised with. Most recently, over the weekend or before Christmas, we had a Temple defensive tackle, a nose tackle to be exact Demerick Morris, 6'3", 285 pounds, coming over. This individual has so many starts at Temple, it should be able to kind of carry over here at Oklahoma State. Now, does this mean he's instantaneously going to be a guy that can show up and start? Probably not, right? I don't think he's going to be able to walk in the door and automatically beat out Justin Kirkland. But if we're having some wrinkles in the 3-4 or to the 3-4, the different iterations of that are going to allow more depth to kind of take hold here. And he played 341 defensive snaps for Temple in 2024. He started a couple games as a true freshman, and as his years progressed, he got better and better and better. He was able to log 42 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, a sack, pass breakup, and a fumble recovery. And I seen some people talking the other day about how, from a film perspective, the 6'3", almost 300-pounder doesn't exactly pop off the film. And if you're looking for sexy and pretty and fun, then maybe this isn't your dude. But he is going to accomplish a task. Even when you look at the film with him at Temple, he was a massive disruptor. He would eat up double teams. He was constantly in the backfield or creating so much havoc at the point of attack where the quarterback and the running back had to shift their original play call, right? So if it was through the 2-hole, he would blow that thing up, require a double team, and the running back would have to kick it outside. That seemingly is going to allow for a lot of people who are getting out on the edge to be contained dudes to get more and more involved. I think you can see somewhat reminiscent of what Nick Martin was able to capitalize on a couple years ago. We had some disruptive forces down low that didn't exactly pop on the stat sheets. I definitely think that, Demerick Morris is going to be one of those individuals that is going to fill in and fulfill a need that we absolutely have to have. Even if you're not getting, a bunch of double teams, you have to be able to create some semblance of pressure, which we could not do last year. So this is going to be a very welcome addition to this Cowboys squad. And we've talked about Rashad Bradley, Chandamian Bradley, but Rashad Bradley brought a buddy alongside of him as Jeremy Cook, a defensive back, commits to Oklahoma State. And Cook is, coming in from Eastern Mississippi Community College, just like his buddy. And he was a 3-star dude that is looking to continuously add a big frame to the versatility back there. At 6'3", 190 pounds, this individual is coming for Kevy Thompson. Kevy Thompson is added as the nickelbacks coach, which is another conversation in and of itself. We have multiple offensive line coaches. We have multiple linebacker coaches. And now we have a safeties coach that is responsible just for the nickelbacks. So the individual training that these guys are getting is something that we're not really privy to a whole lot in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Now, he was originally committed to Arkansas coming out of high school. Then he decided to be part of the Neon Dion fad at Jackson State. Some things kind of fell through. He has 3 years of eligibility remaining, and he was recruited by Cincinnati and Southern Miss as well coming out of high school. His buddy Rashad Bradley is going to come in under the new regime, and whenever you're thinking about the continuity that some of these guys bring in, it's going to be a breath of fresh air to have multiple dudes that are coming in together that have a lot of that familiarity. Another individual that we were able to swoop in and get late on Christmas Day is going to be Carrington Pierce. The 6'1", 175-pound defensive back from Chaffee College decided to come to Oklahoma State and help fulfill some of the needs that we have. And I think this is partially one of the reasons that you saw the up and down out of Kobe Hilton. We are going to have an episode where we talk about the guys that are outgoing because we've had some, developments there as well. But Kobe Hilton was just recently talking about how he was excited to run it back, and now we're hearing that he's in the transfer portal. Pierce could potentially be a byproduct of some of that. He was beating out schools like UCLA, Nebraska, Boise State, KU for his services to come to Oklahoma State. Just racked up 24 tackles, 6 pass breakups, 3 picks. And this is another individual that has the size and the versatility to do a multitude of things. And it accentuates that Todd Grantham has a particular system that he's trying to kind of, mold and mend to. We talked about J.K. Johnson, the LSU transfer. I don't think that we've necessarily talked enough about some of the offensive guys. Now, the offensive guys have been a little bit more, hit and miss, but we've still got some dudes. And I think one of the biggest things that we should discuss amongst all of this is the precedence that is being set by the guys that we're bringing in. This is a clearly identifiable thing that the staff is looking for. And the ties to the SEC, the NFL model, and having all of these individual coaches are going to be absolutely massive. I think last year there was not enough checks and balances, right? So there wasn't enough accountability. I think by having so many coaches strategically in charge of specific groups instead of, generalized groups, you have a safeties coach that's involving all safeties. Well, now we have a safeties coach. We also have a nickel back coach. And that nickel coach is going to be somebody who strategically works on the ability to flex between kind of corner and different iterations of the safety position. So there's an emphasis by Mike Gundy to have a lot of the individual accolades for these individual positions instead of, in totality, just having position group meetings designed to get the most out of these guys. Having the individual coaches that don't just have an all-encompassing position wrapped around them, I think it's going to be absolutely huge for the capabilities that the defense is going to have because of that individual training. The technical side of the game isn't necessarily what we were getting last year. We weren't getting the little bitty techniques because we had so many upperclassmen. They learned a lot of the techniques, previously, and they didn't have the coaching, at least this previous season, to show all of the younger guys, you need to twist 2 inches this way because when your eyes go here, the quarterback's looking here. We didn't get a lot of the intricate details, technical aspects of training this season. So bringing these guys in to just work on that, it clearly is going to set the precedence moving forward for this defense that Todd Grantham is bringing in. And I know you guys are excited about it, as am I. We should all be excited about getting tickets to not just sporting events. That is right. Gametime is going to help you get the tickets you need. And again, this is not just football related. That is the beauty of Gametime. They're going to be able to get you the best tickets, the most tickets, without you searching through thousands of hours or minutes for all of that stuff, because the Gametime picks is going to filter out all of that fluffy stuff for you, so you just find the most incredible deals right off the rip. The all-in pricing is going to allow you to know the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. The lowest price guarantee means that Gametime will credit you back 110% of the difference which is covered by the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. You all know the panoramic seat view is the bee's knees and what I need in my life, because there's sometimes hooliganry of buying scalpers tickets and getting put in the wrong section. It happens. Take all of that craziness out of the equation with Gametime. Take the guesswork out of you buying tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Make sure you create that account, redeem that code, LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off. Download Gametime today, because you already know what it is, ladies and gentlemen. It is Gametime. All right, so the defense continues to get richer and richer. Thank you, Todd Grantham, and the staff that you have assembled to kind of make this thing happen. But we would be remiss if we didn't at least talk about some of the individuals that we've been bringing on the offensive side of the ball. Is it going to be as wowing as some of the defensive guys? Well, obviously not. But are they going to be able to fill specific roles? Whenever you're talking about like the tight end, which we covered the other day, we have a plethora of tight ends. The emphasis on that position has a lot of Oklahoma State country very excited to finally see what that can look like again. But even on top of the tight ends, you have to have some dudes. Now, I'm a big believer in Io Shotomite King. I think that he's going to be a very adequate replacement for DeJon Stribling. He's a big body, 6'5", 223-pound wide receiver that can get out and do a multitude of things and make life difficult on the outside. Well, when you got one, it's kind of nice to have another, and we did, in fact, grab another. Ladies and gentlemen, we went by way of Purdue, and this young man at one point in time looked like he was going to be a very good candidate to end up at Kentucky. So the SEC recruiting and the ties that he has, it should be able to spell a lot of future success on the other side of the ball for DeJon Stribling, just to kind of open some things up. And when you're looking at the Purdue receptions, dude, and Shamar Rigby, another individual that can go up and get the ball. I've seen one publication that had him at 6'5", 175 pounds. Another publication has it like 6'4", 190 pounds. So it might be a little bit hit and miss, but this is another reason why the Body by Glass system should be able to do phenomenal things for him specifically. Coming out of high school, he was a pretty sought-after individual. Obviously, we just talked about some of the SEC connections he had in the recruiting realm. He had some Big 12 connections in recruiting as well. Coming out of high school, caught 42 passes for 632 yards, 8 touchdowns. And he was somebody that I think you can plan on being one of those jump ball specialists. Now, we have another jump ball specialist in Cam Powell coming in from the high school ranks. So if you combine Io Shotomite King, and I think you could throw Talon Shetron in this mix as well. Now, Shamar Rigby, the weapons that we are going to have at quarterback are going to be worth paying attention to, because Oklahoma State definitely has made a name for themselves over the years from a wide receiver perspective, and I don't expect this to change anytime soon. Nor do I expect it to be, an absolute necessity that we have to go get more wide receivers. I think this is a big pickup that's going to do a whole lot for our team. And going alongside those wide receivers, it should be able to bolster that room even more. Now, we do have an offensive lineman to talk about, because we've had some experience with some transfer offensive linemen being successful, even if they're coming from, smaller levels. And Lavaka Tuakeo, coming from Weber State, has 3 years of eligibility left at 6'4", 315 pounds. He's got the versatility to play both guard spots. I think he would have the athletic capability and the cerebral side of the game to be able to play center if need be, although we feel pretty comfortable, I think, collectively with Austin Kwiecki and Jacoby Sanders. So having some versatility at guard is going to be big for us. I know it's not, necessarily an offensive position, but we did get a kicker that was 15 for 15, and he won an award at Idaho State. And this is Gabe Panikowski, and he's got multiple kicks of over 55 yards. So is he going to be able to roll right in and start right away? I think that would be the idea here. And listen, you have to have a good kicker. I'm not going to go on a long soliloquy about mismanagement of punters, right? I'm not going to do that. But whenever you're talking about some of the offensive guys that can flip the field, I think kicker is definitely a part of that equation as well. We did talk a little bit about Kason Carpenter. This is another big deal, in my opinion, because of the fact that he's got multiple years, at least 3 years available. Coming from Tulsa, another guy that can play multiple spots on the interior, whether it be right guard, left guard, or potentially even center, which he has a lot of familiarity with, obviously. 6'3", 295 pounds. Coming to Oklahoma State from right up the road in Tulsa, of course, is going to be good for us. I don't think we talked enough, though, about Louis Canepa. This is the dude coming over with Andrew Mitchell, Coach Mitchell, from New Mexico, that has over 1,100 starts and had a lot of versatility or capabilities, I guess you could say, with a lot of starts. This is an offensive line group that was ranked one of the tops in the country for 2 years in a row when it came to rushing and sacks. They only gave up 20 sacks this previous season, and he was part of that crew. And at 6'4", 320 pounds, he's going to be a tackle that I think has the ability, again, to kind of kick around and do some things that we're used to, right? That maybe we haven't seen a lot recently, but this is not going to be new territory for Oklahoma State to have a multitude of guys that can kind of mix and match and be maneuvered all over across the board. If you think of it like a chess pieces, you've got some influx there. And versatility was something that Oklahoma State has kind of made their name on in getting guys that can adapt to multiple positions. If you go back to the Cowboy back position, right, a lot of those individuals ended up being some defensive ends that were converted. Now, we did end up having a couple tight ends mixed in the bunch there. We even had a converted quarterback to tight end. But the offensive influx of offensive linemen and tight end, I think, do solidify the fact that we've got some things to work on and we want to become a more hard-nosed football team. What the offense is going to look like under Doug Meacham, I think that is anybody's guess. But under all of this offensive influx, the one position we haven't really gone after a whole lot has been quarterback. Now, we did make some plays at a couple dudes. One of those obviously being Chandler Morris. He took the bag. Good for him. It'll be nice to see what he's able to do at Virginia. But another name has popped up that I think we have a really good shot at, and that's going to be Haas Haney. He's a J.W. Walsh gamer style of guy, which so is, Garrett Rangel. But the difference is Haas Haney kind of came in physically ready to rock and roll at TCU, and they do use him on a decent amount of packages. So I would say seemingly the same way we anticipated maybe getting some Zane Flores action, that's what TCU is able to get out of Haas Haney. We have multiple connections here. Of course, we talked about the ability that we have with Doug Meacham and Kevin Johns because of that familiarity. I mentioned it in the comments, but Kevin Johns recruited Garrett Rangel, but he didn't recruit Zane. He didn't recruit Milo Iake. He obviously had a heavy hand in recruiting Haas Haney, but he ended up at TCU where Doug Meacham is. So Haas Haney has connections with both our new quarterbacks coach and Kevin Johns and the new offensive coordinator from TCU and Doug Meacham. If the finances are applicable or we have enough to make it make sense while also having enough to kind of spend elsewhere, I don't want to get too far sidetracked from spending money where we know it needs to be allocated to. Offensive line, tight ends, we're seemingly getting more of that, squared away. And then we have a wide receiver, right? Coming over from Purdue. That should go alongside some of the other big bodies that we have that can play X or the Z on the outsides. And then we already know with DeJuan Lofton, Gavin Freeman, I think Cam Hurd can kind of flex as well and play a little bit of that slot position. We don't know precisely how the offense is going to be completely rounded out yet. But while the emphasis on the defense seems to make everybody happy, I think the offensive line and the tight end direction, it should at least give us all a peek back to some of the tight ends of Oklahoma State history that we'd like to see again. And speaking of seeing things again, ladies and gentlemen, we get a Big 12 game for a bowl game. And we've talked about how it's kind of ridiculous, but after what we watched in the CFP round one, the ridiculous gets even more so. What is not ridiculous is trying to hammer home on some money-making capabilities. And with FanDuel, this is America's #1 sportsbook betting partner. You are going to be able to get in on the NFL action, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with a $250 bonus in bets if you win your first $5 hauler. FanDuel has so many ways for you to lock up the next big W. And whenever you're looking at Tylan Wallace, that's an individual to get excited about. Tyreek Hill, you know you should be able to hammer somebody over there. I know Justice Hill has a little bit of a nagging situation. Whenever you're looking to get the most bang for your buck, you got to get it with FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 back in bonus bets. You need to go to FanDuel today to make every single moment matter more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so we're only a couple days away from Colorado and BYU. We could talk about the ridiculousness of them getting paired together. I don't think that should ever happen, any conference, anytime, anywhere. Nobody wants to go from conference play to them playing each other again. Now, I guess, right, there's some Pac-12 carryover from the bowls to the season. Whatever. You still cannot make the argument to me that it makes sense to put two teams in the same conference right now together. And I think it's even more validated with what we just recently watched. I think BYU would make SMU look like a redheaded stepchild. Why do I know that? Well, because they already beat SMU at one point in time earlier on this season. Then you look at what Indiana did. Great story. But I think what this should show more evidentiary proof of is that the Big Ten and the ACC are a shell of what they used to be. See, the Big 12 is going to get knocked because of the parity. Ironically enough, you get dinged in the Big 12 from a recruiting perspective. Make sure you go check out Locked On Big 12. Drake hammered that today, and how the Big 12 gets downgrades off of recruiting. Like there's a player left from Texas, and he got downgraded from a 95 to an 85 or something to that effect. Another player went from Michigan to BYU and went from a 96 to an 85. It's just, we as Oklahoma State fans have always known this. We've talked about the star gap as it closes if you transfer to Oklahoma State, or even if you're a high school guy like Jalen Beckley, you're committed to Clemson, you're okay, you're a 4-star, you decide to go to Oklahoma State, you lose the star. We get all that. But on top of this madness that we've always known has kind of always been there, now we have to make this determination on whether BYU or Colorado could beat Indiana and SMU. I think you could make the argument that both of them would definitely probably do so, because BYU is a very complete team. Colorado is one of the hottest teams in college football to end the season. It is an absolute travesty that we have to see them go up against each other, especially now, because if BYU plays whomever and they boat race whomever, they win convincingly, it adds more validity to the argument that the Big 12 got screwed this year. And now Colorado, I think, again, being one of the hottest teams to end the season offensively, they have more than enough firepower to hang with anybody, and they've got some dudes on the defensive line and defensive front seven in general that can kind of slow a lot of game plans down. This is going to be their opportunity to make the case that, hey, both of us were better than both Indiana and SMU. It's a travesty that they're doing it against each other, but it does kind of make you ask the question, if we know that the ESPN likes to get cutesy-tootsy and 247 with downgrading guys that leave the SEC or the Big Ten and go to the Big 12, do you think there's a little bit of this game that's purposeful? Just because of that argument alone. There's no way you can say that both teams will beat both teams, or at least that's going to be the narrative that is driven, because we're going to find out who's better amongst those two when they play. I don't buy that. I think BYU, if they'd have played more or less almost anybody, they'd have had a really good opportunity to win that game and prove that they should have been in the 12-team playoff. I think Colorado is in a similar situation, that if you give them somebody else other than a BYU team that should be in the top 12, then they likely make the same argument. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that they have to go up against each other, especially now knowing what we know, that the 12-team playoff, the format, it's a good idea, but there's still too much ridiculousness built in. And that's exactly why they went away with the BCS and moved to this, was to have less politics involved. Yet when it comes to the decision-making process, it's not about the best teams available. Once again, it's about the political side of it. Now, the fact that Alabama didn't get in and SMU did, the politics behind that, I think, kind of makes sense, but the politics shouldn't exist. That almost feels like they were just making wrongs right from not letting Florida State in. The ACC is not very good. The Big Ten, outside of a couple teams, is not very good. Like, of course, I've been saying that for a long time, so have you. But is this finally what the world needed to see? And furthermore, does the BYU Colorado game shift that narrative at all? Or because they're playing each other, does it kind of stamp out some of the dissension that could come down the pipeline? I hope that moving forward, regardless, there should be a rule that there's not two conference teams playing each other in a bowl game. That is pointless, even if they didn't play in the regular season. You're not making a determination on who's better at all. And in this raging war between conferences and trying to stay relevant for the next round of likely realignment, the Big 12 is not getting any favors, which is yet another reason why we all got to fear the fork. We got to don some ASU gear and cheer for the Sun Devils to do what TCU did a couple of years ago against Michigan and kind of crash that party. Now, what we don't need is Arizona State to get past that or get dominated. But Texas they're good. There's no denying that Texas has one of the best defenses in the country. There's no denying that from an athletic perspective, they should be able to do more than Arizona State. But, of course, as Cowboy fans, we're wanting a little bit of retribution from Texas, dragging our head through the mud in last year's Big 12 title game, much like Arizona State did in their Big 12 title game against Iowa State. But regardless of who wins this game, I hope that the narrative doesn't get beaten down like it almost feels like it's intended to be, that BYU and Colorado didn't belong or that either didn't belong. I know they, didn't, have this in mind with the CFP, probably, likely not. But it almost feels a little purposeful towards the Big 12 because there's always going to be posturing up the Big 10. And there's going to be some posturing up the ACC because Clemson wins a lot of national titles. But the Big 12, for whatever reason, is not getting the respect it deserves. So I hope for a barn burner of a game between BYU and Colorado. More importantly, I hope it's a good enough game that people from a national perspective see that both of these teams are better than both of the teams that you just watched. The Big 12 needs to find a way to get respect. And unfortunately, in the SEC, you have like 7, 8 built-in wins. The Big 10, same thing. 8, 7 built-in wins. The ACC, 8 or 9 built-in wins. All you have to do is beat a couple good teams, and the rest of the season, you just can't get in your own way. The Big 12 is the only conference where last place can beat first place and second place can lose to 14th place all day, every day. It doesn't mean that we don't have talent with teams like Arizona State and BYU and Colorado and Iowa State. It just means that the parity is so difficult that it's a war every single week in the Big 12. And instead of getting props for that, and ESPN and the national media talking about how the Big 12 is the most difficult conference, we've heard that it's the funnest to watch, but that's just a lame duck argument. I don't know. Put some respect on the Big 12's name. Hopefully Arizona State can do that and get a W against Texas. And BYU, Colorado, I don't envy either of you because you're getting screwed. But it is what it is. That's all we're going to have on this one right here. We are about to go get on with Parker Ainsworth and talk some hoops because we're about to take on Houston. All righty, y'all. You know I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Like it if you like the daggone thing. Dislike if you don't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. My podcast people out there, do what you do. Hit the stars, leave a review. All righty, later, my taters.